Welcome to the last Live ACIM of this Satsang series for the summer. July and August have been this very deep and profound time of joining for us all. And it's been a great unwinding in the mind from any ideas of whatever we thought we were doing and what we thought we were being called into. It's been a real clarification and a call into clarity as a state of being and our natural inhabitation. So let's join for a moment to take a pause. For anyone new that's joining us, we start with a meditation and then I'll call you back with a little bell. So while everyone's getting settled, we're just going to take a few minutes in silence just to drop in. Our theme today is I will step back and let him lead the way. And it answers two of the main themes for today. What is true forgiveness and how can I be truly helpful? They're not overtly asked in the questions I'm going to read to you, but it is the theme in the mind that's up for healing. And they're very well demonstrated in these questions. And they serve as beautiful examples for the mistake, the little blind spot in the mind that we're all making. They're such profound and deep topics. It almost, I feel tentative even to move into the questions. And the Spirit is giving me a setup pre-questions so that we can all be in the answer together, even as we hear the deepening that's possible through these very common misunderstandings and mistakes that the questions are uncovering and exposing for us all in the mind so that we can really receive the answer today. You have faith, you're very devoted, but to whom? There isn't a separate you that's making decisions between a right-minded state and a wrong-minded state. You are either default wrong-minded or right-minded. And in truth, you can only be right-minded and slightly deceived, it seems. So we're really getting clear today on what forgiveness is and what forgiveness isn't. And it might seem strange that that's our focus at the end of our nine episodes of this Live ACIM Satsang series. And yet the misunderstandings that prevail about what forgiveness is are so strong that it's a very circular motion. It's an unwinding of the mind. It's a curling right back to a simplicity of salvation that's needed for the mind to truly, humbly be still and quiet with holy empty arms in order to receive what's given, and only that. Most of the time, and we've been using hands as a symbol the entire way through this series, there's been temptations to grab, to get, to want, to have, to possess. And then we've been noticing relinquishment and openness and softness and a yielding and a not knowing and a not understanding and a sitting by with holy empty arms, so that we can just simply receive the answer as it seems to pertain to this character self and this story as we go along. Without that willingness to take the second place, without that willingness to stand down, you will be recreating a scenario where you're simply doing what it looks like you want. It's never been you. Nobody wants pain. Nobody wants suffering. Nobody in their right mind would choose unhappiness. And yet following the ego is that choice. Following the ego, thinking you're a person in the world, is that misperception, that misidentification of who you are, and is the cause of all the stress in your mind. This misunderstanding about who and what you are will have you, of course, misplaced then for your understanding of what your part in forgiveness is. And even though the Course repeats and repeats that acceptance is your only function, which means that it's already forgiven and you're just to accept and go, oh, thank you, that everything is forgiven, everything you imagine has occurred. until you really come into a space where you're in acceptance that it's already happened, that there's great cause for joy and celebration and relaxing back, then even the answers we've been receiving here cannot fully be accepted because they still seem to contain an element of risk in some way. Some element of that may or may not suit me. I may or may not want to follow that as a person in a world. And yet, true forgiveness and this play of awakening that's being performed in front of us by all the wonderful little characters, all 8 billion on this planet Earth, and all those throughout time and space, whether it's backwards or forwards, through all seeming unfolding, all the dramas unfolding in the universe, until we see that that's merely a play to show us a belief or a desire deep in the mind that we have not yet seen, and allow it to raise to awareness so that it can be questioned, until we see that's all that's unfolding before us and that there's nothing to fix or change or alter on the screen, then we won't be really coming into an experience of forgiveness. We'll still be misunderstanding ourselves as a person. We'll still be misperceiving that there's something right or wrong we could personally do in form. Following guidance, coming into a state of innocence and forgiveness is really a leaning in to listen to the Holy Spirit and to follow. The two they're so joined, they're the same thing, the listening and the following. Without the following, it doesn't matter what you've heard. Without the following through on the guidance, which really allows you to face those deep beliefs in the mind and allows you to really question and hand over and harness those desires in the mind so they can be used for awakening, for forgiveness, that releases the mind. And that only occurs if you follow what often looks like a form guidance. And first of all, a surrendering and a leaning in and a not knowing and an acceptance of not understanding, but being deeply loved by one who does. And secondly, a following through, almost like a character in a video game, to discover what it is that's still linked in the mind, that's showing up in form as drama. It doesn't matter whether you think it's a good or a bad drama, it's just drama that involves you, has you entangled, that until you're using it solely as a mirror and not a reflection of who you are at all, you won't be able to see this blind spot. And forgiveness is really, first of all, an acceptance of that blind spot, and we call it a perceptual problem. And secondly, an acceptance of the answer to that perceptual problem, which is the vision of the spirit. There is no place for people in awakening. There is no place for opinions or ideas or personal inspirations in awakening. Awakening is simply seeing all of this, the screen in front of you, as a reflection of a state of mind that is showing you what you believe and what you desire. It's not making you right or wrong for it. If you're feeling an experience of pain and suffering, then it's trying to make as clear as possible. I mean, this is a benevolent universe, as clear as possible what is holding you back, that unquestioned thought in your mind that is holding you back. And so to be in right relationship with what even looks like another, you must first be in right relationship with yourself. You must first accept that you've misunderstood who you are and that your entire orientation towards time and space, towards this little character sense of self and other, is off, is misconstrued, is part of the mesmerism. And you're invited to step further back so that you can see that more clearly. Now, the fact that the course uses psychological language often gets people confused because they imagine projection as being, oh, I'm projecting onto him or her, as if one person is projecting onto another person. It's like, woo, 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 I don't like you. I don't like you either. I don't like you. That's not projection. Projection is seeing, imagine these little finger puppets, is seeing the entire play of awakening. Even the finger puppet that you seem to think you are, all playing out before you, thematically, to show you something you believe deep in the mind that you've never questioned. And you can't change that by sewing up a different puppet, changing the outfit that puppet is wearing, changing their size or their girth or their height or their length or their ability level or their smartness or their goodness, their holiness as a little finger puppet. You can't change anything. And one little finger puppet can't help another little finger puppet. So today is about learning to be truly helpful and simply taking the correction, capital C correction of innocence, to the perspective we're coming from, so that we can see we have a perceptual problem. Today is all about acceptance. Until you really, really accept you have a perceptual problem, you won't hear half of what the spirit is sharing with you, and you won't feel the totality of the relief on offer in every instant. So that's what we're going to look at today. Let's start here. It's from the workbook. And what is forgiveness? So it starts with forgiveness recognizes what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred, and vice versa. And it goes on to explain that an unforgiving thought is one which makes a judgment that it will not raise to doubt, although it is not true. Now that's super clear. An unforgiving thought is one which makes a judgment that it will not raise to doubt, although it is not true. That means that anything you perceive in time and space, whether it involves your little sense of character self in an internal way, the character having thoughts, the character having actions and dramas, or another, or their interior monologue, as you imagine it, is going to be false, de facto. It's never going to be true. So it's not like you really heal perception. It's a relinquishment of trying to interpret what's before you, and a surrender to not knowing and not understanding, and an acceptance of the vision of the spirit, and a simple following without trying to figure out the problem, and a following simply of the answer and the solution, and being in that solution. And you can see that skips a whole step. And for most people on a spiritual path, all that processing and all that figuring out is simply a delay mechanism. It isn't truly bringing you any closer to a surrender point, except by the fact that eventually you will see it's not working, and you'll scream out in pain and ask for help, truly, finally, and it will be given immediately. The mind is closed and will not be released. The thought protects projection, tightening its chains so that distortions are more veiled and more obscure, less easily accessible to doubt, and further kept from reason? What can come between a fixed projection and the aim that it has chosen as its wanted goal? So when we imagine something in front of us, say some form of a drama, interpersonal drama, this is a course in relationships, so let's start there. That's the basis of the questions. When you see something in front of you and you solidify it into they're this and they're that, and that's why they're having this type of interaction. And I, the third little finger puppet on the screen, I understand why that's happening. And I think I have the solution. All of that is false perception. The only way this little drama playing out on the screen can shift in experience for the one watching is that they become less identified with the character they think they are, long enough to disidentify with the other two characters who they have also created to support this identity of who they are, this character sense of self. And for a moment, simply be the watcher of the scene. And the only way you can do that is by your willingness at a ground level, in a very simple way, as you stumble upon them, as this witnessing world brings to your awareness what you believe and what you desire, so that you can recognize it, first of all, and not judge it, but simply bring it to the Holy Spirit for questioning in innocence. Until that time, there is no loosening. So it looks like a process until it's an instant. But this is the speed up, if you're willing today. The speed up is to never again blame anything in form for how you feel. And that includes anything that seems to be happening between other people that brings up distress in your awareness. So this is the fast track, to never again blame anything in form for how you feel. And that includes the little character self that you are in your awareness. You can't blame that one either. You can't say, well, if Sarah done better today, I'd be at peace now. And that's the split. You decide how the whole universe feels, you, the one watching. And that comes first. You must decide how you wish to feel. You must decide the type of day you would like to have in experience. And it will be given because you are the ruler of the universe. And so I can't emphasize enough just how important chapter 30 is with rules for decision. If you really want to go for the miracle-minded leap that this course offers, which is a state of mind that is different experientially from the figuring out, understanding, reasoning mind. It's completely reasonable, what it teaches, and logical, and consistent. It's pristinely so. And therefore, it's very relaxing to the egoic mind when you read through chapter 30, and it makes it out in point format saying, if you do this, this will be experience. And so if your experience at the end of the day is not that, in the middle of the day, at the start of the day, then you go back to one. I must have decided wrongly. I forget what to decide. Because this is the invitation to come into a state of mind that just washes you of this false idea of control and participation. It's what the course calls the hero of the dream. Whether you think you dislike the life you've been having or not, you love your part. You chose it and you're playing your little heart out, just as if you're the hero in a movie. And by hero, I mean the central figure, the one around which all the drama happens. Whether you perceive that as good or bad, it doesn't really matter. What can come between a fixed projection and the aim that it has chosen as its wanted goal. So let's go through a couple of the aims that you might have chosen as your wanted goal that are other than peace. Being a good person in the world, being a helpful person in the world, being a kind and loving person in the world, being there for people, being available. Basically, anything that has you cut out like a little cookie cutter as a person in a world doing something is the aim, is the alternative goal to peace of mind. And this very stepped back, very soft spot of watching with the vision of the spirit, being unconcerned, and I mean authentically, not ghosting, not pretending over the top, as you watch the world. Just like you do in Rules for Decision. It's the biggest practice tool really there is in A Course in Miracles, because it is the base level for every moment going forward, seemingly, that you would once and for all decide that how you feel is what will play out. And again, we spoke that there's a little, like a residual lag that seems to be there. So that means on a very simple level, because we had some requests for practical application this week, that when you see something coming towards you, like the story I told of my purse seemingly being stolen when the car got broken into, and yet I'm about to leave on a plane and everything I need is in it. You go, wow, how is this going to help me have a happy day? It's a decision. It's a decision. And even in that moment, if you're still, fingers crossed, but you're not convinced that it's going to make you have a happy day, you can at least be curious and go, Holy Spirit, I am this, you're going to absolutely knock this one out of the park, because how? I have no idea how this could contribute to me having a happy day. You're really going to have to show me, but at least the mind is open, not closed, as we just discussed. Now, that's kind of an amazing introduction to what is forgiveness, because it's not mentioning anything about the kind of ideas we have about forgiveness, like forgiving people for what they did, or, martyrdom, or putting up with it, allowing for people when they're really spiteful or unkind or unloving towards us, or, just understanding they're having a hard time, but they're being mean. And I feel them as being mean and attacking me, but, we'll just hold the space, we'll rise above it. Yeah, none of that's forgiveness. That's called forgiveness to destroy. It has got nothing to do with A Course in Miracles, with what it teaches. It has got nothing to do with release. It has got nothing to do with holy relationship. And it has got nothing to do with remembering the truth of who you are. Because the little scenario I just described to you, you can see it keeps you stuck on the screen in a drama, where some people are, giving their worst, and some people are giving their best. And, some people are very benevolent and they're just allowing for other people. It's like, no, that's the whole trick of the drama, is that you're actually playing your part perfectly. You're being the benevolent one and they get to be the bad one. It's the same. It's actually the same. You need them to be bad for you to be benevolent. And so we really want to come into an experience that's beyond all that, because that's exhausting. And while we gave that our best go, and we tried to be the goodest we could be and the bestest we could be and the most spiritual we could be and the most tolerant we could be, turns out it was a trick. So let's get into our questions so we have some practical application. Dear Sarah, I've chuckled while witnessing my questions dissolve when in line for asking a few weeks back. And since your satsangs began, I've been asking the Holy Spirit for insights through dreams and movies on what needs healing. One place that Spirit had me stop was with the film Angela's Ashes, when Frankie had been beaten by Lamar and his mother had not acknowledged his standing up for her. The same happened when I was 10, and I thought I had forgiven my father around this. And apparently I haven't yet, since feelings came up for me. Okay, so in the movie Angela's Ashes, which is a pretty rough ride, in terms of worldly childhood upbringing. Lots of justification for anger in there in the story, it would seem, and lots of unfairly treated as well. There's a small child that you watch from birth, and when he's about 14, 15, his father has now completely abandoned the family, and his mother has taken up with another man who seems to be unkind to the children. He just tolerates them because he gets what he wants from the mother. And so the eldest boy is watching a scene whereby his mother seems to be being spoken badly of or mistreated by this man. And if that was us in the scene, if that was the character that you believe yourself to be, what you would be asked to do is question what you're seeing and how you're feeling. And so, because this is a beautiful movie playing everything out so that we, the one watching, can see it all, the boy does what humans have been raised to do as noble, benevolent, and good, and stands up for his mother. What ensues is that the stepfather character just pulverizes him. And instead of coming to comfort him when he's lying in bed all black and blue, his mother goes upstairs to comfort the stepfather and be with him. And so the perception of the 15-year-old is confused because he had the courage to do what was right, and it didn't give him what he wanted, which was the love of his mother and her attention. And so when we get very clear on the misunderstanding we have, when we get clear on this little bit here, that the other aim and the other goal that we have in every seeming situation, then we start to understand why the play is occurring. So from the point of view of this movie, let's utilize it with that scene. The boy felt bad. He felt like his mother was put upon and never appreciated her whole life, either by his father or now this stepfather. But what he wanted was for him to be appreciated by her. And so you can see that what seemed benevolent and noble actually has a very different goal and aim. And when we have a goal and an aim that's personal, that's from the past, that's based on getting something for ourselves from a situation or from a person, then we're only aggrandizing the ego, no matter how noble it seems. And so it'll become easier to see that our goal was not peace, and we weren't stepping back to listen to the spirit to find out what was truly helpful. And we weren't really following a pathway of awakening. Now, there's nothing wrong in the story, whether the boy had stood up for his mother or not stood up for his mother. The play is for us, the one watching. And so the misunderstanding that comes, though, from having been taught the rules of operation in a world of being a good person, and when they don't play out the way, you're not getting any kudos for doing the thing that you thought was supposed to make you a courageous and good person, then the mind gets confused. And when you solidify beliefs that are already there and draw conclusions over the top, that's what the Course is talking about in what is forgiveness, about how it becomes even more tight and in chains, so that distortions are more veiled and more obscure and less easily accessible to doubt and further kept from reason. Now, our questioner, who's very sincere and has just come across this experience, is still being part of what she believes when she stood up in her own life for her mother in that situation and realized that now she still has some anger against her father. What's really occurring in the mind is a second chance to look at a very key moment, which really expressed this false empathy. And And because our questioner has such a calling now for true forgiveness and true empathy, which I'll go into in a minute, then this opportunity is resurfacing. Now, when we look back at something that seems to have been a key moment, it's like in the game Kerplunk. I don't know if any of you know that, where there's all these little sticks crisscrossing through plastic and marbles on top. And when you find the right one, you pull it. Well, all the marbles fall out. You totally lose your marbles in a good way. You lose your marbles here and win the game, because what you'll discover is that it had you wrong-footed from the beginning of your life. And yet you've probably built your story of who you are on this scenario. The protector of the mother, the good friend, the good therapist, the good healer, the kind, strong, scrappy one who always stood up for everyone else. And you start to see that the reason that we didn't fully question what happened to us at that point, seemingly in the story, this at least vignette that's been given to us today, and everyone has a version of this, where you did the right thing and you still seem to have gotten slated for it. Well, the reason is because it needs to be questioned, that you know what the right thing is. How could you possibly know what would serve the whole? It's very easy to accept that as a human being, you don't have that level of awareness that you could possibly know what served the 8 billion in like what seems to be a chess game of immense, possibility for disaster, of getting it wrong or right, or hurting people, or, being unkind to people. The amount of contraction in the mind of trying not to hurt, harm other people, instead of questioning that anything you could do could hurt or harm another, when you, the one watching, are responsible for what you think and feel. And if you want to play it out till it's all collapsed for you, therefore, so are they choosing what they seem to think or feel. It's really you, but for the moment, you're not responsible for how another feels. You have actually no control over how a seeming other feels or thinks. What you do have control over is the mind that you are coming to peace. And it is your responsibility to choose for that. So this is very deep today. So, many times when we get into stories like this, I hear people saying, but what if this happened and that happened? Would you not intervene? Would you not do something? And again, it's not about the actions that would be taken in a moment. It's about the purpose behind them and why they're occurring that matters. From where you're activated. Are you being activated to awaken and dissolve the entire play? Are you being for peace? Are you being activated to maintain your self-concept and to maintain the perspective, the perceptual problem of a world of dramas where people are having interpersonal experiences? So it's very different. It's not really about what you do. It's about what you're perceiving and whether you looked for the correction first. And from there, if something's given by the spirit, it's now coming from something that's simply given. It's not coming from the past or your own personal motivations. So that's the key. It's very, very important. So she goes on to talk about another scene in Angela's Ashes, which I don't recommend anyone watching unless they have a deep dirge and they're stuck and they can't find anything in their own life that they think is tragic. Well, this will evoke much tragicness for you, and it will flush up any false empathy if you have any. So it's good for that. So Frankie, the lead character, is in church, and he's so distressed he can't even go to confession because he's so sure what he's done is wrong or bad that he can't even confess it, because even to allow himself to hear what he thinks he's done will just crush him. And so he's so sure it's wrong. And it's a beautiful scene because in it, the priest, who's a very open-minded, kind, loving priest, being very, very different for the time, sits to one side and has him pray to Saint Francis at a little altar and tell Saint Francis all of the things that are terrible that he thinks he's done that are so terrible, instead of telling the priest, which is an authority figure where he's expecting a certain sense of, well, to be demonized for a start, but retribution or scolding or damnation, hell and damnation. So when he asks and he tells all of this, he just pours out his heart and forgets where he is and just pours it out. The priest just gives absolution immediately without getting into a discussion or giving advice, absolution for the perception of wrongdoing and the perception of the guilt, which involved another young girl who was sick. And yet Frankie can't really accept it. And he keeps asking on behalf of this other girl who's sick and has now died, saying, but what about Teresa, Father? Will she not be, sent to hell for what we did? And he said, no. He said, this is a kind and loving God with a kind and loving answer. And do you not think that she wouldn't have been given absolution in the hospital when she was sick and dying by the nuns? She's okay. But really, Frankie's not asking about her. He's asking about himself. He's saying, did I do enough? Am I forgiven? Am I innocent? Are you sure this is okay? Are you sure this is okay? Are you sure this is okay? And that's really one of the advantages to joining like we are here, writing in your questions, having them exposed or exposed to a mighty companion, is to have that deep shame and guilt exposed so that you can really hear the truth of the ring of forgiveness, that yes, and now all you need to do is accept that it's forgiven. The thunder outside. That it's not being held against you. The only one holding anything against you is yourself. We're going to talk a little about true empathy. To empathize does not mean to join in suffering, for that is what you must refuse to understand. That is the ego's interpretation of empathy and is always used to form a special relationship in which the suffering is shared. So the likelihood is that this little story from our questioner would have set a lifelong pattern of being the protector of the mother. This would have set a lifelong pattern of being the helper. And until the motivation is seen for the original desire for that, which of course can still get harnessed by the Holy Spirit. So you don't need to be afraid of why you began something. And yet you do need to be aware of it, because it will prevent you receiving your support that you need today, being in that role of the helper. The clearest proof that empathy as the ego uses it is destructive lies in the fact that it is applied only to certain types of problems and in certain people. And that's what the Course means by specialness. Miracles are involuntary, and you cannot choose where to bestow them or to whom to bestow your time. And when we get to our second question, our second email, this really clarifies that. Having identified what it thinks it understands, we always know is dubious. Having clarified what it thinks it understands, the ego sees itself and would increase itself by sharing what is like itself. It's just trying to weave a web of need where it's needed by certain specific someones, which it's also created out here. This is the little needy one, and this is the one who will bestow it, and then they'll just like give it. Every time they want, give it. But if you could see, and I'm not that limber, that these little fingers are all on the one hand, that it's really like this. It's a game to keep the focus here, like a methadone program. It's like, I have methadone. I'm a drug addict. Give. I'm a drug addict. I have methadone. Give. It's the drama. see it, won't see the part it's playing in it by the aim and goal it has that's other than peace. Your part is only to remember this: you do not want anything you value to come of a relationship. You choose neither to hurt nor to heal it in your own way. You do not know what healing is. So this is the great humbling here. You do not know what healing is, because healing is a change of mind. It's a change of mind about your mind. It's a shift in identity. So what could it have to do with people and bodies? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You do not know what healing is. All you have learned of empathy is from the past, and there is nothing from the past that you would share, for there is nothing from the past that you would keep. Do not use empathy to make the past real and so perpetuate it. Step gently aside, and this is the call up. This is the answer right now. Step gently aside and let healing be done for you. Healing is always singular, and it's always for you, that experience of oneself. It can never be for another. It can never be between two, you and another. Healing is singular. It's the awareness of a unified wholeness. And so what it asks of us in this chapter 16, where it's going through the forgiveness of illusions, is to step back and let him lead the way. So it's very humbling. In any situation that seems to need healing, this is what's asked of us. Focus your mind only on this. Keep but one thought in mind and do not lose sight of it. However tempted, and that's a true word, we're all carers and healers and lovers of people and kind ones and holy and trying our best people. That's not going to serve. That's the mask. However tempted you may be to judge any situation and to determine your response by judging it, focus your mind only on this. I am not alone. And I would not intrude the past upon my guest. I am not alone, and I would not intrude the past upon my guest. I would not activate my I know mind. I have invited him, and he is here. I need do nothing except not to interfere. I need do nothing except not to interfere. Simply sitting in presence, accepting the help of the one that we accept has brought forgiveness to our awareness, and accepting the love of the one who knows what's best for all in every circumstances, then this patient sitting back and not intervening is our only function. Our function in forgiveness is to witness to what is true and not focus on what is false, by joining in false empathy with it, by joining in sorrow with it and sacrifice with it, in suffering with it. That's true empathy, to not join in suffering. And so we can sit there, and it's a very kind state of mind. It's very gentle. It's not grabby, and it has no push to it either, because it's a witnessing state that can accept what seems to be playing out with absolute certainty of what's true and no need to interfere. That presence, that allowing of the Spirit to be present, allowing of Jesus to be the active component in the moment, to allow Christ and presence to simply be, to be the truth of who you are and the seeming other is how healing happens. And just staying right there. Yes, your hand may move out and may hug someone or put a plaster on their finger. How healing happens can only be singular for you, the one watching, though. Not the person in the little scene, but you, the one watching the scene with the two. And so the test of truth is how you feel. And you're not wrong or bad when you feel over-involved, activated, dramatized, and yet it doesn't serve your peace of mind or even the seeming scene that you appear to be in. The power of love, which is its meaning, lies in the strength of God that hovers over it and blesses it silently by enveloping it in healing wings. And that's quite a beautiful vision there. There you are, the seeming little character self. There's a seeming other, perhaps who's distressed or upset or in need of help of some kind in your perception. And you're asked to sit in trust and allow the healing wings to be above the entire scenario. Only the Holy Spirit recognizes foolish needs as well as real ones. And he will teach you how to meet both without losing either. You will attempt to do this only in secrecy, meet the needs. This is the specialness. And you will think that by meeting the needs of the one, you do not jeopardize the other. So you will think that in giving everything over to help this one over here, that it doesn't jeopardize your peace of mind. And yet, if it jeopardizes your peace of mind, how can it truly be helpful over here? It can't. It can't. And that's the undoing of, all martyrdom and stoicism and things like that, because it doesn't serve. It doesn't serve. Two little puppets playing out this drama here instead of you surrendering your hands and allowing healing to be exactly as it is. So you will attempt to do this only in secrecy. And so it's almost, this is the blind spot. It's almost like a little secret pact with yourself. It's like, I'm willing to give everything over so I can help them, even if it feels terrible short term. And I feel really bad because I'll get what I really want. My aim and my secret goal that is not peace, I will get it eventually. And so it's more vampiric. It's not really benevolent at all. It is like using one another in this little game to feast upon, to keep a drama going. And I know this is quite soul destroying if you believe you've been a helpful person your whole life. And it was for myself and all of my mighty companions when we began to see the depths of this true and false empathy. And yet it is really part of the release from the mesmerism of being a person in the world, because it's the most potent, special relationship that we want to have, where we have a special answer for a special person and only we can give it to them when we deign to. And it's got nothing to do with God or giving as God gives. And you will think that by meeting the needs of one, you do not jeopardize another, because you keep them separate and secret from each other. So it's the face of innocence. You're keeping the desire that you have, the true desire that you have, the true aim and goal secret from yourself, so that even you're not aware of it. And therefore it's running the show. And that's why it's very important to just allow all those mixed beliefs and, opposing desires to come into awareness without shame and without hiding, to hand them over, and the spirit will harness them. And so if you still have a passion for helping people or being of use, the spirit will say, I'll take that, but just let me show you how we can utilize that preference, just a preference, to move you through time and space, to go through experiences where you can see it's not up to you. So you can't either succeed or fail. You can't make someone happy. You can't make someone be loving. It's not possible. You can only make a decision to see love and to see lovingness. And that is a decision that you must make. But you can't decide that someone is unloving and in a bad, distressing state and then want to fix them and manipulate them into being happy and loving. You can see the enmeshment. It's an entanglement there where we just want to stay super involved and stuck on the screen. It's not really very benevolent after all. It's like, it doesn't really give you what you want. And the sooner we see that, like, the happier we'll all be. So, on to my second question. Ooh, the world is shaking. Dear Sarah, the past week, this thought has been coming so strongly to my mind. As I see them, so shall I see myself. Yet the desire for others not to be unhappy or unloving still feels like something outside and real. And then the craving for a deeper purpose and connection arises. I don't want to run from discomfort or thoughts of being stuck, dependent on how those around me feel. I would like to see where I am still situation dependent and know that I am worthy of a peaceful state of mind in whatever situation without compromise. Also asking for clarity on the level of pain I have gotten used to in my mind. How do I be more gentle with myself and yet remain uncompromising in my desire for peace and truth? Okay, so I feel like we've addressed a lot of this in what we've just spoken about. As I see them, so shall I see myself. Well, this questioner just has their metaphysics backwards, because as you see yourself, so shall you see them, is what's playing out. So if you continue to stay in scenarios, situational thinking, that you have been asked to step out of because it's not supportive for you noticing how you feel and taking total responsibility for how you feel, then the drama will just continue to play out. It will then get worse and more dramatic because it has to, because you need an end to the pain. So there's no way of staying in a situation that you've been guided to leave and to think that there's any way that that's non-compromising. You're completely compromised because you're not following the spirit. You're following the ego's dictates and your preferences, those secret aims and goals that we spoke about that are not for forgiveness, acceptance of forgiveness. And so you are in a loop of false empathy, whereby you're making up stories of all these dramatic people who you stoically have to stand by, no matter how dreadful things are getting for them, even though you've been guided clearly over the last 2 years by many people not to do that anymore. So again, unless you follow what's been given for you, unless you recognize that the mighty companions in clarity that you've put your trust and faith in by your own asking, not by any standing that anyone else has, who've clearly brought to awareness what you're facing, which is just a lack of awareness of yourself. And that can't be restored to you until you step away from the drama. Because you won't, until they're removed from you, you won't actually be able to see that the drama is coming from you. You literally think they need you. You won't recognize that you've made up their need for you. And then you just happily hand out the methadone to the heroin addicts. Whatever way that plays out, doesn't matter how noble it looks, it's not your part. So you will suffer and be in extreme pain, increasing pain. But the mistake is just that you don't understand that the release for all in this perceptual problem is to take care of this sense of self first. It's the avoidance of the taking care of the one self that actually needs your focus and attention, that is prolonging the suffering and pain playing out in the story of there being as if there's multiple people, places, things, interventions needed. And that is the entire hero's dream. And if you choose to make the turn in the mind towards following what's actually given for you, only then can you have the release of the discovery of what's been playing out all along. Until you step further away, back up the hill a little, you can't see what's been occurring in the valley. You just can't see it from in the valley. You don't have that like high enough perspective on things. And so the spirit is simply saying in the easiest form possible, you need to come with me now, just me, so that we can comfort you, take care of you. And then when you feel safe and secure, and I know it seems like a breach of sorts for you to depart from this way of being, but once you're feeling safe and secure, and the spirit knows what you love, there'll be some way found to walk you into that scenario. You look back and you'll be absolutely amazed at what was really happening the whole time and how big a part you had to play in what was happening and how completely unnecessary all of it was. Now, this is not to demonize or make wrong, but it's as simple as this. If you don't follow the guidance that's been clearly and evidently given for you, and you stay in special relationships to do healing and forgiveness as some kind of like party game in your own way, well, then you're a hostage. And you will reinforce the hostageness of everyone else you see and perceive too. You won't be seeing Christ and strength in your brothers. You using this point of view to weaken them. And that's why it's not very pretty when you really look at it. So that's the true empathy section, which I highly recommend everyone to read again once more. Chapter 16, getting really clear on what your part is. And it turns out that helping people is not part of awakening. What is awakening is a withdrawal of awareness, a focusing what looks like inward on the mind to the one point and the one place you have power, and that's on what you believe and what you desire, and just being very comfortable, absolutely shameless about what's there, because the spirit can give whims and can give opportunities for holy encounters. But this is the purpose that you need to be devoted to. It's an internal journey with the intimacy of the Holy Spirit, with Jesus. And if you were saying no to that, I want to play it out here, you can keep playing it out, but you can't go any deeper. You can't be relieved. You can't come into your magnitude or the truth of who you are. And in fact, what you're doing is more akin to farming, just like keeping agrarian cycles of life and death going. It's got nothing to do with healing. Keeping bodies alive or keeping people in one spot or keeping people together, this false sense of community is not the community of the mind or the community of the spirit or communion. And communion is what's now invited. So that's very important for everyone. The shift in the mind is when you understand that communion is where all good sense of community will come from. And if you've not experienced that yet, then you're most likely being invited into a more sequestered state, which our first questioner is in as well, in order to face it. And so she has stepped away in the way that was asked for her. And she is really courageously taking her time to focus on herself, which is probably excruciating compared to the scrappy little fighter who would stand up for everyone else and be everyone else's best buddy. This is probably excruciating to, I don't know, even take a long bath or take care of this little creature self that she experiences herself to be, because it's the antithesis of the self-concept that the ego made to let you never know the truth of who you are. So, following, essential. True empathy, not optional. Painful, talk about a waste of your time and energy if you're in false empathy from the beginning. It doesn't matter how many times you have to go through a cycle seemingly of that one. That's the deepest healing for nearly everyone on this path, because it's coming from a psychological, therapeutic background. It's using the language of dealing with people. But just read the psychotherapy pamphlet one more time so you get clear that everyone who comes in to speak with you, when given, and this is very important, not when grabbed and saying, I want to hang out with these people because I could fix and heal them. When someone comes across your path and is given for you, they are merely going to be a mirror. So I have some examples of different ways in which I stretched from one way of thinking to another, but I actually feel to open it up for some questions, and they might come in naturally that way, because this is our last show of this season, and I really would love to hear how everyone is in terms of if there is a pertinent, potent, clarifying question on true empathy and true forgiveness, then let's go for it. Let's bring it up now and join with one another. And I'll just see if I can find the correct view here to see you all, because I'm really enjoying being joined with everyone through all of this. And I'm aware that everyone is taking leaps, and I'm aware that everyone is being very brave in exposing where they're at and in asking for help. And the depth of that asking is being met. So anyone who's new here, just to understand, we always do like a hands up, physical hands up. So just let me know if there's a feeling of something that anyone has on their heart that they feel they'd like to ask a question based on things I've shared already. Okay, Nick. So we're going to unmute Nick.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Nick.
And thank you for this, and thank you for all that you do. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Just going back to a few sentences ago, you mentioned the psychotherapy pamphlet, and everybody who comes who isn't grabbed for is, who's brought to us, and you said they act as a mirror. Could you just, I'm not quite clear on that. So it's basically, anyway, I'll let you speak.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Nick. Lovely. You can mute Nick and I'll speak to that. Okay, so let me give you a practical example. You have me perfectly teed up there, Nick. Thank you. When I first got the course, I left all of my previous life and I went towards the psychotherapeutic aspect, thinking I need some way of being in the world with people to utilize this course I've suddenly discovered. And in moving, very innocently towards that, I started to really discover it was so blatant, the experiences I had, and so undoing and dumbfounding that they almost frightened me. So what happened was I was working for a helpline organization for suicide prevention or support, rather, because we were never allowed to obviously tell anyone what we thought they should do. And it was all about listening. And the very first day I got put on a Saturday afternoon being the walk-in center, a girl walked in who was the same height as me, had the same hair color, and looked just like me, sat down opposite me. This is the very first person I've ever had sit in front of me. I'm just a volunteer. And she tells me in a stream of consciousness everything that's wrong with her and everything that's distressing her that she can't figure out the answer to. And it was every single thing, word for word, that I was upset about that day and worried about in my life, word for word. And I was so upended that I just actually could do nothing but sit and listen. Whereas I had a kind of a natural, social skill of intervening and giving helpful advice and things. I was so stunned that I sat there and all I could do was stop myself from crying from alarm, because this was me looking at me asking for an answer, seemingly, because that's, how we're raised, like as if we're supposed to help a person personally. And I sat there and I had no idea. And I was brand new to A Course in Miracles. I literally just got the book. So it's not like I just didn't know what to do. So I did nothing, which for me was extraordinary. And I just sat there asking for help. And, by the end of the session, just a sense of calm came over me. And then she jumped up and she goes, "Oh, great, thank you. I feel better now." And I just sat there like hanging on for dear life. That's all I can describe it as. And she said, okay, what happens now? And then I didn't know what happened now, because this is the first person I've ever had to come in. She goes, "You know what? We'll just see how it goes. And I'll see if I feel to come back again." And then she walked out the door, put on her coat, bright as anything, and left. And I dropped onto the chair, shook. And I had no idea what had happened, except the spirit was saying, "And you think you will be helping people. This is just for you. Nothing is for others. It's all just for you." But it was so shocking, and I had no context at all for this. And I hadn't actually read the psychotherapeutic pamphlet yet, that I was gobsmacked. And it's really an understanding that was still at the highest what we're coming from today, Nick, in answer to your question, would have been seeing that there were two little characters on the screen, both saying, "I feel upset about this, and these are the things I'd like help with." But she so articulately brought them to my awareness as I watched, that I could go home and I was now confronting them, because they were inescapable now. And so that's the part that the one coming has. And so I, the one witnessing to what's in front of me, can put all the focus on saying, "I don't have the answer to that. I don't know. I don't understand." What? Help. Just help. And it began like a very deep and profound experience of going deeper myself. And this is way before I even had my companions, who I didn't know anyone at this point who even studied the course. I got it in isolation. So it was a very dramatic experience of seeing, you are your brother's keeper. And if I had wanted to stay in the role and had tried to fake over the top anything, even having some kudos or like I'm at the center, I just kept nodding, because I did not know what was happening. And it made it pretty obvious that I was also to resign that position, because it talked about serving. It served in 1 week of service. I got everything I needed to understand from all of the mirrors that had come through to me on the phone and had been in front of me, that this was about me and for me. And I needed to put my focus most acutely there. And so it just was a real speed up to see that this is my question, this is my answer. And rather than be the one who answers it, my function was to sit there and say, "Wow, I see, Holy Spirit, like I believe what she's saying too. Wow, I noticed that. So what's the answer for me?" And really, in wanting to know the answer for this experience of myself, and receiving that first, literally in the moment, live, in any holy encounter, and to not think it's about someone else, then, and only then, as a very last thing, if there happened to be anything to do or say, nod, stand up, sit down, open a door, put a hand over a tissue, if there was anything that was helpful to do, it would just come involuntarily through, or you would simply seem to hear something that was helpful to say or not say. And it was extraordinary. So that is how, simply put, everyone that comes before you is only coming there to show you something you cannot see in yourself. Thank you. And just one more thing, especially if you think it's something you've maybe like healed yourself, that's really good. When that's represented to you once more, and you're going, this is interesting. Why is that showing up again? Because when you've fully cleared something, it usually drops away completely from your storylines. I had a storyline about perhaps not being a bit of an Angela's ashes, not totally being taken care of as a kid. And I had an experience where the spirit in the garden one day, just, I could feel it cracking, my adhering to this story and the need to let it go. And suddenly I was given visions of entire scenarios that looked like parental neglect, like teaching children to fire guns at age 5 or drive cars or have them on the top of a car when you drive it, whatever it was. All these scenarios started playing out. And instead of seeing the 5-year-old holding the wheel, I actually was given the vision lower down, because that's where my focus was, because I was the older sister. I was given the focus of the parental hand underneath the wheel, actually steering, that I had not seen at age 10, when I thought I was to take care of small siblings with a kind of a wild father. And I got to see time and time again, I was mistaken. And I was literally given whole perspectives. And I sat with my companion. They were like, go for it, just let it all go. And it felt like the side of a cliff crumbling off. The whole storyline just fell away, that I had not been cared for as a child, that I was ever unsafe, that I ever needed to worry or fret or be the big sister or care for other people or watch for them or be over mindful, you know. So it's really incredible how, when you're willing to be wrong about everything, even those things that seemed to be the backbone of who we turned into as people, when you're willing to see them and to see you were mistaken and just to ask to be shown, the devices the spirit will use are so miraculous. They just will relieve you of that point of view and then show you the vision of the spirit, and how, of course, it was always the spirit taking care of you. Why would people ever be left to take care of you? Like, how would that build confidence in healing in the mind? But the perception that people were in charge of you and they did a good or a bad job, that's a very limiting belief, you see, which we all need to question. So thank you. Anyone else have something that they would like to share? Okay, we've got Lynn. I'm not sure if I'm seeing everyone, but I think I am. We'll try Lynn now. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you for clarity on rules for decision, and just with the part on decide on the day you want to have the experiences and the feelings, and like the doubt that creeps into my mind with, I do not know my own best interest, or where I'm unwinding, or like where there's any grasping, where it's just like, I'm like, okay, I just choose peace, like, because I seem to not get it right. But it's like, then I feel like I'm negating the power of my mind. So I just feel a little stuck in that thought process of wanting to choose, but not trusting myself, and wanting to hand it over, wanting peace to be it, but certain things inform too. But Lynn, I don't want to get so exceptional.
Lynn, if you were 3, can you be 3 for a minute? Okay. How would you like to feel, Lynn? Can you just tell me? Free?
Say loved, free.
Loved. Yeah. Ah. That feels like a lovely thing to choose. And you have the quality of the feeling, which you see is very important. And sometimes when we say peace, it's like a bit over there. He's like, I'd just like to feel loved today. I don't feel loved. I'd like to feel loved. And I have a quality of feeling that feels even more like just tender, cared, seen, cared, like someone will be gentle to me. And so when you tap in, like you just did, to like a sensation and a feeling, you can just allow that to expand. You say, this, I would just like to feel like this feeling got taken care of. And I might not even have the right words, Spirit. Can we take care of this? Say, can this just feel taken care of, this feeling? And when you can really tap into something that you know, that there's no division in your desire, with the emotion that you just felt, it's like, yeah, I really just, could this just be taken care of? I'm so tired of like, right, you know, coasting over the top. Then the Spirit goes, yeah, of course, because I can harness that. That's a very pure desire in this moment, because you can feel it. 100% of you wants that feeling to be taken care of. So all day long, no matter what's happening, I want you to say, all I want is this to be taken care of. I don't want to be involved in what's happening. I don't want to play the part that I normally do. I don't want to have to stuff this down. Show me how this unfolding is just going to allow this to be taken care of. Just show me. Just show me how it's coming towards me. And without judgment. So if something is like a sharp, we've all had these, like a slap across the face. Okay, so time to go. So, okay. So if to have this cared for feeling, you're saying out this door right now, there, it's changed me, it's turned me in the aim. And so not here. The Spirit's very gently going, yes, not here, out the door. Okay, I'm out the door. I'm just standing here in the fresh air. Where now? What to follow with this feeling of cared for? And allow yourself to be moved through the day based on nothing but the purity of that desire, and the Spirit will work miracles all around you to allow that feeling of being taken care of to unfold. As long as you don't judge what happens, think it says anything about you, think it should be different, and use it simply as energetic, directional communication. This, not that. I had a great friend once who said, if it bites, drop it. If it bites, drop it. You cannot stand there with something biting you, hanging off your finger, and choose peace or being cared for. You must remove yourself from the situation. You'll gain perspective later, but you cannot stay in intensity that's not given for you to find the care. The care that's been given for you is for you to be in a situation where it's simple, nothing is asked of you, nobody needs you, and a supply of income is coming for you, where you have a very simple backdrop job. And so for rules for decision, then every day you get up saying, okay, so now I know why I really want to follow the Holy Spirit. I've gotten my little heart space here. I've got my mighty companion beside me, who's a great cuddler and a great carer and a great lover of things. And she is going to speak nothing but the truth to me, which means I must listen if I want to be the one who's cared for. If I want to remain in the role of caring for others, then I will literally negate and diminish and demean and push aside this little one that needs to be cared for. And so being cared for will not be the experience anyone else has from me, because I'm denying the only place it can be given in this sense of self. Taking that care, accepting that love in the way it's given, and accepting the assignments which will allow it to be given is very important, because that's what you're deciding for the whole universe. So you're not only 3, but I'm saying to you, ding, you get to decide for everyone to get taken care of in that way. And the only way you can do that is that you say yes to you being taken care of in that way. Now, not later. You're so important. You're this Christ child of the whole universe, the one we've been waiting for, and it's just too important. It's too important to push off another second. And everyone here can feel it for themselves, and the gift of your question. It's now. This is the intimacy. This is the communion experience. And this is the unknown that's really just opening a door to love, nothing else, okay? So just allow the spirit in, a spaciousness to orchestrate everything for you and lift you out of where you are, because it's not given for you. Yeah, I'm sure we can all feel the potency of finding in rules for decision how it is, what's the immediate call for love, like that we could immediately accept. And Lynn so beautifully demonstrated for us there. And one word that is synonymous with peace that I use a lot, if someone can't quite tap in, and the word is relief. Wouldn't you like to feel relieved, you see, of whatever is tight and holding you down, even if it's just a guilt thought or you think you should do better or whatever, is like to feel relieved. And so you must find, when you first, don't even open your eyes, rules for decision. If I make no decisions by myself, this is the day that will be given to me. And it uses words like a happy, peaceful day. And you find in that moment the most intimate response you can make, the truest response on your heart, and you begin there. If your day elevates and it's all expanding and it's all unraveling, you can say, yeah, now I'd like to feel, like adventurous. But you must begin where you are. This is what we talked about that week when we said you must expose where you are so you can be found. It's by yourself. It's yourself that's hiding from the love of God. Of course, the Spirit knows where you're at in every moment, but until you allow yourself to be located and beamed up, in awareness, whether it's through answering the phone call in the Matrix or stepping into the clearing for Star Trek, so that they can latch on and be beamed up, until you've exposed it that way, you can't really allow. It's like the acceptance of the vulnerability or the need. And when we read that in the course, that, your need of forgiveness is what the world needs. I thought that was so beautiful. Your need of forgiveness is what the world needs. It needs you to focus on it, needs you to open up to the intimacy of that and how that beautifully serves the whole. That's your purpose. And having something simple, getting our lives simplified so they're not full of drama, so that everything is serving 100% towards this intimacy and this spaciousness, to take that moment in our day to be able to notice how we feel and not gloss over it. It's everything. It's that simple. I would say the simplicity of salvation starts with awareness of your need for acceptance of it. If you're not aware you need to accept it, and that you need an experience of salvation, and that you're not having it in this moment, being relieved 100%, then you can't really choose it. You can't make that choice. So you can't choose to accept that salvation has already happened and that everything really is okay. So thank you. I'd like to tell you a little story, actually, and this might answer the other question I just heard in my mind about true empathy and a seeming storyline situation. Before I got A Course in Miracles and I was living in Dublin, I was helping a friend out who was coming home from being in an addiction clinic. And the help she needed was her entire house had to be restored to something that looked sane for somebody to come in and to be able to recoup in after she emergency got taken to hospital. And as I had begun tidying it up, the first night, I had discovered she had entire sacks of drugs still in the house. And she was more a friend of my father. And so I was left in this predicament of wondering what was truly helpful. Like, what do you do? What if some of them are real medical needed things and some of them aren't? I don't know. It's not my place to make a decision. She asked me, could I just clean up the apartment so she could just come in and, you know, take some quiet time when she discharged herself. And it was like as if it was up to me. And so when I'd seen the disarray, the level of disarray that the apartment was in, I didn't really know what to do. I remember I had a late shift at my part-time job, so I went back to it, 5 to 9, and I thought, I'll go back after. Maybe I'll know by then what's helpful to clean up. And I worked my shift, and it was late and dark, and this is not a great area. And I'm walking down these back streets, and I suddenly come across, I can hear roaring, screaming, and I can see all these other people dashing into little side streets away from the noise. And there isn't actually much street lighting here either. And I come across, I have to walk this way if I'm to get to her house, and she's coming in the morning. So I can't just skip out again. And I come along, and I'm watching a man in his 40s. And it looks like he's completely pulverizing a 12-year-old. And I remember standing there, eyeing up corners of streets, ways to get by. It's a very narrow Irish old street. And thinking, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's helpful here. And I guess what I'm sharing is something had happened in my life up to that point. I just read the Celestine Prophecy where I'd understood the energy exchange between people, and it really lit my mind up. And there was one sentence I remember from the whole book in that moment as I stood there. It was, everyone believes they're doing what's best. And as I looked upon this scene, I mean, this was an extremely violent exchange. I thought, he doesn't mean what he's doing. That's what I heard. And it felt almost crazy in the moment. It didn't feel like a sane, rational, or even helpful thing to do anything. And yet this part in me, and it's what I got the course shortly after this, it says, for one who's seen their brother in themselves, their selves and their brother. And I just thought, all I could think was, this is not what they want to do. I don't think this is what they want to do. I didn't see a persecutor and a victim. And I was like, my heart was thumping, and I was like, this story is I've only told once before. And I didn't know what to do. And I felt my body step involuntarily into the middle of the road, which was tiny and there were no cars. And I put my arms out, and I heard, be like Jesus. And I remember thinking, I don't know that that's going to be enough. This person's gone. Like, they're past themselves in ability to do anything. And I remember just putting my arms out, and I said, what has he done that's so terrible? And that's what I heard. That's what came out my mouth. What has he done that's so terrible? And he stopped beating on the child. The child turned around and looked at me as if to say, are you absolutely crazy? I remember thinking that was the look on the child's face. And the man turned around to me so startled because he was so involved in this seeming situation. And he turned around to me and he said, what? So I just repeated the question. I said, what has he done that's so terrible? And he actually proceeded to tell me that the child had robbed an old woman and had beaten her up. So he got to say what had disturbed him. And I said, okay. And then I heard, and what's that going to teach him? I said, but what's this going to teach him, or that's going to teach him? I don't know what the words were. And he said, well, hopefully he'll never do it again. And so I just joined with him and I said, hopefully. But what happened was there was just a shift in what was occurring in the mind. First of all, I had to see nothing wrong with what was happening any more than a heated discussion or an irritation in a parent's voice or something. And it was what I saw, genuinely. It was what I saw because of what I had just learned. I had just read this book, and it shifted immediately. And the child stood up off the ground, and, you know, the father like slapped him across the head and he walked off. And the father still had all of this seeming energy coming through, and so kind of did a threatening thing in my direction. And I just said, okay. And, you know, kept walking. I was very young at the time. And I remember like my heart thumping. And when the whole thing had been happening, feeling like a bowl of light around me. The point was, there was no personal heroics involved in this, even though I was someone who would have stood up for people. That wasn't where it came from. There was just searing clarity that what was occurring was not what anyone present wished for. And so I'm sharing it because it seems very similar to the scenario that we started with, where our friend seemed to see her stand up for her mother getting beaten up by her father and intervening, and her mother never thanking her. And the shift is really in where we're coming from in that moment. And that was, for me, I never spoke about it for years because it was such an extreme and extraordinary situation. I really didn't know what was happening. And what it allowed me to do then was to, when I went into this apartment, was to simply be in the same state of mind, emptied all the drugs down the toilet, flushed everything, whatever I was guided to do, clean up the apartment and go home. And face the wrath also of the idea that someone would be mad at me, someone who was very influential in my life, who was coming out of hospital. And it was as if I needed that scenario first before I could do what was truly helpful. But remember, I had put out the prayer to be shown what was truly helpful. And I no longer had a motivation for thanks or reciprocity or goodwill, or that I'd even be liked by this woman, or that I was doing what was right for her. I didn't have any of those motivations. I no longer cared about those things. I just wanted energetically whatever was truly helpful to happen. And that's what unfolded. And so it's never about the form of a situation, whether it's right or wrong, or you should or you shouldn't. It's not an intervention in form. It's a shift in perspective. And then something involuntarily occurs. And so I felt that it might be helpful to share that, because we get so fixated on the intervening and what's right and wrong and helping people as if there's something happening between them, rather than what's occurring is, again, a mirror of the mind here. And in that moment, the only call was for clarity, and I had put out the prayer myself. And so, yeah, it's the amount of miracles that can be inadvertently occur through you. And I've had so many that people have shared afterwards where I did nothing. Like someone came for a counseling session and I was in Vancouver Island, and all I could do was actually lie on the couch. And I felt so weird. I'm like, I can't even get up or speak. And the person said, that's okay. I'm actually going to hang out on the deck and do some yoga moves. And I'm like, okay. And I was just appalled. This is so unprofessional. This is so uncaring. This person trekked an hour and a half out here, and I can't even speak or get off the couch. I'm lying here. All I can tell you is I'm exhausted and I cannot move, which is not a state I would normally have had. And at the end of an hour and a half, the woman came in and she said, I've had the most profound experience on the deck. And a whole shift had occurred in her mind. And it was by me doing nothing, because my job was to not get in the way of her deliberate intention of coming out and what she needed. And it was her commitment to coming to meet me, being a symbol of non-compromise, that had allowed the mind to move through all of its fears and then do what was actually truly helpful, standing on the deck without me doing a thing. And then she left me a donation, and I just did not know what to think. And what I'm sharing is that your part is very small in everything that happens around you and inadvertent. And if you can maintain your focus simply on acceptance for yourself of the atonement and authenticity of where you're at in the moment and asking for help with that, what happens to the reflection of the entire storyline, including the character that you seem to be, is that it looks like it resolves into wholeness. And yet you will also get reflections where it looks like it doesn't resolve at all. And you cannot accept that as personally for you either, because all gifts are accepted in time, but you cannot wait for evidence to appear of their being accepted. Every gift that's given is accepted. You cannot wait for the reflection in a way you imagine it should be to turn out that way. So forgiveness is definitely an experience of acceptance and is not something that happens between people or by people or for people. It's the dissolving of the identity of a little personal sense of self and coming back into a holistic experience of just a real experience of oneness. And the more you take control off, that you don't have, but the more you allow yourself to take your hands off the wheel and be led by being very authentic and asking for help every time you need it from the spirit, the more gentle it comes, because you're not like hanging onto the sides, like as if you're going down a slide. You're not like, you're not interfering. And it's more like this. You put your two hands across and you just accept that it was never up to you. It was never up to you. You're just one more little color and flicker on the screen as a character. Yet the magnitude of who you are in truth just aches to sink back into that truth and be in that belonging now. And it doesn't have to take a long time. It doesn't have to play out over time and space. And the character doesn't have to look like it gets anything right. It's just the forgiveness of seeing you're not that character. That's where the stepping back really occurs, and the release point comes on the day you do everything wrong and the worst. Make the worst faux pas you would ever have wanted. Let all of your loops and all of your trigger, everything comes up, and you do everything according to even everything we've shared. You don't do it, right? You're still not who you are. And at any moment you can see that and find that innocence and love and perfection in the one watching. And the laughing begins. We've been having such a lovely time over the last 9 weeks. It's been amazing, just epic, really, for me and my experience. And I really would love to hear if there's any little residual anything that's left in the mind that we could speak to now. Just pop up your hand if there is. Celia, I felt Celia coming, yes.
For me, what I'm taking away is what you started with. I will step back and let him lead the way. Seems to be what I heard in your stories, and that's what I'm taking with me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. It really is absolutely wonderful in that section. Thank you for reminding me. I'll just read it to us for us all again. Just that little bit, she said, with 10 pages of that he is always with us. You've invited him and he's here. So the idea is just to allow him to take care of whatever seeming situation you appear to be in, even if it's one of just mild excitement on a first date or something. It's like, okay, I will step back and let him lead the way. Okay, I have invited him, so I would not intrude upon what he would have me see in this moment, in this situation, in this experience. And it's such a beautiful experience to allow that again. It's not up to me. Oh, right, okay. Oh, maybe nothing's needing me. Maybe I should just be quiet for a minute. Okay. And then also in the moments you feel your heart start to thump and you keep hearing a phrase over and over again in your head, the willingness, even if it seems out of context, to just allow those words out of your mouth, not knowing what they're for. I once had that experience meeting with a group of friends in Kentucky, and all I kept hearing, I was sitting there and there was like 15 of us, a whole extended family of very devoted people. And I was sitting there and going, they're all chatting. I'm like, what am I doing here? Why am I here? Actually, I'm not even sure. What is my purpose here? And I kept hearing, so are you looking forward to playing golf when you go to Scotland? And I'm like, okay, I'm not getting into chit chat. I'm not doing that. I just kept hearing, and I heard it again. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not just starting a chit chat. I'm not getting into chit chat about golf. I know nothing about golf. And then in the end, I heard it a fourth time. I was just like, okay, they're all just chatting. And I just said, so are you looking forward to playing golf when you're in Scotland? And the whole room, it was like all the air sucked out of the whole room. And I didn't know what happened. And suddenly the whole room turns and looks at who I said this to and said, Scotland. And it turns out that there was this massive family healing that occurred right after that, because something got completely exposed that was hidden in the mind between all of these, but mostly from my host, who thought she had to hide certain things from certain members of the family or they would be hurt. And so everything got literally, it was like I'd taken a pin out of a grenade. The whole thing just lit up the room. Everything got exposed, including the underpinnings of why she thought she had done that for years. By the end of it, this is all within 40 minutes, everyone felt like they'd gotten their girl back because she was no longer hiding from them. And this was all for the willingness to say, so are you looking forward to playing golf when you go to Scotland? So you can't possibly know what is helpful or what is healing or why. And my judgment of it would have stopped it, and yet I've had great devotion, but it still seemed like a non sequitur at what was supposed to be like a spiritual gathering. And so it's the freedom to just allow yourself to be utilized in every situation and not hold down a set role in those situations that will really free you up to be utilized for the mind awakening. So that was a fun one that really taught me a lot as well, And so just that stepping back, just to, oh yes, you're here. Thank you. That just feels so powerful. So thank you, Celia, for bringing us back into that. Just taking the second place. To not know and not understand what we're seeing. And just then also accept and allow what is unfolding and happening that we seem to be part of, and remembering that it happened long ago rather than that we're currently doing it. that it's a current activity that we're involved in, where we have a choice. It's a replay of the past as we watch, and that's the only place you can watch from innocence. So, and yet if you're being offered something that's been offered to you several times, and in this invitation, it's your chance to not play the same role. Take the chance, take that opportunity in your heart to be relieved and play a different part, because the part you're playing has been maximized and really can't serve you. You see, 4 awakening can only serve to bury you deeper in the mesmerism. So let me just check and see how we're doing. Yes, I'm hitting the road the day after tomorrow, and we're just heading north, and we're just open to whatever the spirit has for us next and tuning in. And so we said we would do July and August, while we were so graciously given somewhere to be for that period of time, so that we could, set up and do this series. So I'm so grateful to our host here, and I'm so grateful to the Live ACIM team for coming together, and for all of you to bring your questions and your presence and your spirit, because this is a collective experience of doing this together. Yeah, and to just really tune in for how we can be alive and lit in every moment. That's it. There isn't something to fix or heal. The orientation needs to shift into simply being alive. And is this serving? And is this serving the whole? And those two things together, those two questions, is this serving me in my experience, the authenticity, and is this serving the whole, will allow you to relinquish things you would have previously cling to, being sure you understood them, and just say, well, I'm willing to experiment with this. I'm using my rules for decision every day. I'm just going to go. What have I got to lose? Nothing. I really just want to peel back my little fingertips and be cared for now. So yeah, the Spirit's bringing it on for all of us. And yeah, we'll just stay all very connected and in that inspiration. And I look forward to hearing from you all along the way, or wherever you may be. We're heading north, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and we're not sure. That's the general direction it's going so far. So yes, I'm so delighted to have gotten this time with you all and to do this. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time, but it just came out of nowhere. So yes, thank you. Thank you all so much for this time and space together, and for this reflection and devotion. And I felt my heart opening every week with the questions and the clarity and the acceptance that I would have to do for myself with everyone before me. So I'm really so grateful, yeah, to feel you with me and on this path together. And this little imagery set we've got in front of us here, that's a really good way of looking at it, rather than just picking out the character that we're very identified with. It's like there's a whole team on it, on even acceptance. So how could we mess this up? That even that part is so taken care of and worked out well. It's all past tense. So yeah, all I can say is thank you on my own behalf to all of you. It's been wonderful, really wonderful. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Lovely. Love you all. So it's what is it we say? See you soon. That's the only way to roll here. See you soon. See you soon. Love you all so much. Mwah.